Let me start by saying good afternoon, Daisy, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. This unorthodox approach to publishing is something that we just introduced to the market. We interview the authors of books that our team selects for publishing, and we then move to the segment that we call Get to Know Them and Let Them Tell You. A little mystical, but it is. We are sincerely hoping to pick up this and other books of yours, as we certainly like what we read. I just told you a while back, but I will repeat it now, that we will use snippets from this interview for our own site as a marketing tool. So if you're ready, let me introduce you to the audience, our audience. Daisy Papp is a very talented and successful author. She is also an accomplished artist and a podcast personality. Yes, you are. I believe you have a program with a colleague from Down Under. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Wonderful. Daisy's quest for awareness and better world includes several books, talks, and conferences that cover a vast range of ages and levels of society, not only here in the US, but also around the world. And she does so in multiple languages. I know that. It's very impressive. Today, we will focus on one of her books, The Island Model. I will let her tell us briefly the significance of Homo sapiens Isolatus and give us a brief introduction to the book. Daisy?
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm really, really appreciative of your kind invitation and interest in my work. The island model Homo sapiens isolatus, or Homo sapiens, as they say in English, is an addition of the original island model book. And in 2020, as we all have experienced, the microbe crisis came about on the world, and I was told that maybe it's a good idea to rewrite the book exactly for situations and circumstances like that we can understand one another better and that we stop from being isolated.
Wonderful. Before we begin with dissecting the book a bit, I have a very interesting question to ask you because it caught my attention right out of the gate. Tell me about on versus in an island.
Okay. Well, the island model is a psychological metaphor, and it is based on us humans being in an island. We live in our own island, meaning if I lived on an island, I could just leave all that stuff behind and walk away. And that doesn't work. I tried. It's not functional.
Wonderful. Thank you. In reviewing your book, a phrase caught my attention, and it reads that unresolved issues always create more issues. Let's talk briefly about that, Daisy.
Well, when we have in our island stuff that we did not handle or did not heal, then they will show up in different circumstances, and most often unexpectedly and many times unwarrantedly. And that can cause a lot of issues. So I suggest it's a good idea. Take an inventory, clean it out, address what is there, and move on.
Thank you. Is the island communication principle based only on trust?
Absolutely not. The island model is rather a self-inventory where I can look into my island. Most people are not aware what is in there. We can also refer to the subconscious mind. There's everything in there, even prenatal, meaning data that we collected during pregnancy while we were in mommy's womb. And trust is built and earned, and not something to just simply give away. But to building trust, I have another book, that's the 5+2.
I know I'm getting to that one. Our next interview will be about 5+2. I just started reading it. Let's talk about your conceptualization of isolation.
I do believe isolation is dangerous. When we look at nature, even when there's a herd of animals and there's danger, they don't spread apart, but move together. And it's totally unnatural for humans to be isolated when there's crisis. And I'm not even going into what some of my acquaintances that are virologists and epidemiologists say when we are isolating, when, let's say, there is a flu season or something, because we we want to train our immune system. And when we're isolated, that's quite a challenge.
Let's move to building bridges. I like that idea. What happens if communication simply fails between two? Let's just refer to them as islanders.
Well, building bridges, I think, is necessary to live a contented life, because we are not to be isolated. Humans are, I'm not referring to animals, and I'm not comparing humans to animals, but nevertheless, we are mammals, and we are not meant to be isolated. We are herd animals. So in order to build bridges, we must somehow accept and respect other people's opinions and points of views. And we can build bridges in a benevolent way. It's not for invasion, but to walk over and have a look from your point of view so I can gain more understanding.
Thank you, Daisy. I have to admit that this is the first time that I've found an author who is clear about the simplicity of semantics. For instance, the overuse of the word namaste, or namaste, wherever you want to put the accent. Could you expand upon that?
Well, when I heard it and heard it overused over the past decades, I didn't really understand why would people use it when most of them don't even know what it really means. And when they know what it means, they may not know where it comes from. And I'm not an expert in that by no means. Nevertheless, when I do my studies and I expand on my knowledge base, then I realized, aha, so when the sperm meets the egg, there is a measurable light happening. Scientists can measure that and photograph that and video that, film it. And it is not that the sperm is the fastest swimmer who wins. No, no, it's the egg choosing the sperm. It's electromagnetic happenings going on there. Now, because there is this tiny little light happening, some call it the God spark. And when we understand that actually you are a miracle and I'm a miracle, and I see the miracleness in you, and maybe allow you to see the miracleness in me, then namaste starts making sense to me, because it means, translated, I see the light in you and you see the light in me. And I think that's a beautiful way to bring humans together and back to their nature. I believe that we are born based out of that spark, that light. And let's focus on the good in one another instead of finding the fault, because we're all perfectly imperfect.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. Perfectly imperfect. I really like that. Thanks for that clarification. I've heard namaste overused for decades and by people who didn't quite understand what it meant. Thank you for the clarification. Of course, another favorite subject of mine, as I read it, was conditioning. Talk to us about your understanding and perception of conditioning, Daisy.
Conditioning is very simple to be explained when we make a little picture in front of our eye, or we imagine or visualize. So imagine there's a dog sitting and you put food in front of it. There is no activated stimuli. I mean, the food may be stimulating the dog because it's hungry and it smells good. That's one thing. And then picture another picture where there's a dog and I just ring a bell. And that's also, it's just a stimulus and nothing really important. Now, when I put the food in front of the dog while I'm ringing the bell, then in the dog there is a click happening, and in humans too, by the way. I'm not comparing humans to animals, though. That, aha, the bell and the food are linked together. And after a while of conditioning, when you ring the bell, the dog starts salivating.
I love your analogies. It's just like the book I've been reading about, and it's just a phenomenal piece. Let me ask you something. Can two people who think very differently be right at the same time?
Absolutely, yes. There are many ways where we can look at it. A simple idea is, for example, if you sit across someone at a table and you have a piece of paper in front of you and you would draw the number 6. The one who is sitting on the opposite side will see the number 9, and both of you are right. Now, in everyday life, it is happening that I perceive reality based on what's already in my island, based on my beliefs, my conditioning, the cultural background, faith, many, many different aspects that make up my perception, or tint my perception, filter my perception. And the same happens to you. I may feel this is right, and you may feel this is wrong. And we are both right from our own subjective perception point of view.
Another question that I have for you as I was reviewing your book, is this virtual world we live in conducive to building bridges? You think so?
Well, I do believe that it's like a knife. I can use the knife to carve something beautifully into a piece of wood. And I go and use the same knife and walk over to my neighbors and steal their roses. So it is not the knife, it is the user of the knife. Same with today's social interactions when it comes to electronics, and today's technology can be used just like a knife for carving something beautiful or go and steal the neighbor's roses.
As we move forward with the book, Daisy, are we all, to a certain degree, of course, haunted by our past?
Well, unless you make peace with it. When I have not made peace with my past, then I'm reliving it right here, right now. For example, many people, they are dwelling in the past. Oh, yeah, and it was so nice, but I don't have it anymore. And actually, what they do, they fill up the present moment with the feelings of lack and the energy of lack. But that's a different conversation to have. But when we don't make peace with it and we don't come at peace with, let's say, people we had in our life and are no longer because maybe they passed on, maybe they just moved to a different area, or we got a divorce, or we just split a company, that does not necessarily mean that it's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. It depends on what I do in the present moment with what happened in the past. And when I do that continuously or consistently, then I can reach past with whatever my past included.
Couple more questions. Let's talk a bit about focus. In your book, you mentioned that we worry about little things we cannot change, and things that will never happen. Can you expand on that?
Well, I think when we look at insurance companies, that's exactly why they are a multi-billion-dollar industry. Because most of these horrifying pictures that they paint in their advertisements or they speak to us about never happen. Now, on average, a human worries about the future 40% of the time. I'm not generalizing. These are statistics. I didn't come up with those. So 40% of the time we worry about the future, and 40% of the time we're dwelling on the past. That leaves us with 20% of time living our life. So I think it is a much better idea that we focus on the right here, right now, and start differentiating between fear and danger. And when we focus on the right here, right now, and even if there's a dangerous situation and I can be a responder instead of being reactive, that will make a big difference in my life.
Daisy, let me move to change, shall we? How do you see change?
Change is the only persistent in life. Everything changes all the time. And people are so afraid of change. Well, when they look into their own body, there are so many changes happening on a daily basis, 24/7. Then I think it is a good idea to make peace with change. And it depends on which direction we change towards. When I'm changing into a lazy, non-interested, not communicating human, then I'm distancing myself. But when I'm getting eager by finding what I'm passionate about, what matters to me, and I allow others that they have their passions as well, then we can build bridges and focus on what is right here, right now, and stop focusing on what we cannot change, because we are very powerful when we focus on what we can change instead of focusing on what we cannot change anyways, like the weather, the traffic, not having a parking spot because I'm in a rush and I want to go into the theater and I'm late. These are things I cannot change. So the moment when I focus on what I cannot change, then I'm becoming more stressed. Cortisol levels go up and I have lesser access to the creative parts and pieces in the mind where the genius is as well, and the rational thinking, logical thinking.
Interesting. Let me just move. In publishing, we call this big ticket item, no matter what the literature piece is, judgment.
Well, we can use judgment for, again, like the knife, for good and bad. When I judge, oh, okay, I'm judging this is a safe way to walk over, then it helps me to make a decision. When I judge to judge other people, to ridicule them or to diminish their value or gossip about them, then that is not very helpful when I want and wish to live a contented life and have good relations and relationships in my life, quality wise. So when I judge less and observe more, then I'm free. And I like to give that example. Let's say you and I, we walk into a movie theater and we watched a movie and we don't like what's happening in that movie, because I would have written that scene totally different and I would have had the actor act differently, then I'm not going to jump up and down or jump into the screen and try to make changes. I remain the observer. And I think it's a good idea to more often be the observer instead of be the judge, unless you're a judge professionally. Different story.
Entirely different. Let me move to a subject that we rarely, want to touch upon: death. Can death help us build bridges? If so, how?
It sounds very controversial, doesn't it? Because
It
death
does.
seems so infinite and final. Well, when I am someone who is, let's say, very upset about a human who did something that I'm absolutely not agreeing with, and maybe it was hurtful and painful and had huge consequences, and I'm so upset. Now, how does that upset help me solve the issue or find a solution? Does not. Now, death can help me. For example, I put the little death on one of my shoulders in imagination, and I think about that human that hurt me so badly. If they'd had 48 hours more to live, how relative is what happened, or how much easier is it for me to be willing and find a solution instead of holding on to what happened?
Wow, very interesting. Thank you for that. Towards the closing of your book, you talk about the fixed star. Tell me about that, Daisy.
Mm. The fixed star expression comes from astrology, and I borrowed it for the book. Because so when we look from down here into the night sky, and let's say we have a clear sky that we can observe, the fixed stars, they appear as not moving at all, because they only move 1 degree in 72 years. That's very little. It almost appears as if they stand still. Now, we can use that when it comes to our passion, or when it comes to a goal that we would like to achieve, or a direction where we want to head and continue heading, that we make it as a fixed star. It's not moving. And when I keep that focus on that, like I have serving humanity and delivering tools and practices that can change society in a very short time, towards more respect, less judgment, towards more building bridges instead of invading other islands or continents or countries. And when I have a hard moment, or I have a setback, or I have days too where I don't feel so empowered mentally or physically, and then I remember that fixed star. And then everything that happens here in my daily life is just a little pebble on the road. So the fixed star can help us to really keep the focus on what really matters instead of wasting a lot of energy and time on the little things.
Let me ask you about a very unusual segment, not very, but unusual segment in your book. I'm sure that a lot of readers will stop at this one because it's amusing. It's truly amusing. The cow wash.
Yes, it is. Well, I I wrote about a true story that happened in Germany, south of Germany, where in a village there was a farmer and he breeds cows and he has milk cows. And there in this little village, there was a car wash and it closed down because the owner died. And no one from the family members or inheritance wanted to continue that business. And he thought to himself, what if I buy these big brushes and install them into a free range stall for the cows, and let's see what happens. And the people in the village, they were gossiping about him really badly because they thought, okay, so now here he comes again with a crazy idea. And what does he think? Who he thinks he is? And well, he did. He remained with his fixed star. He wanted to serve his cows. And guess what happened? So the cows were leaning against these brushes and enjoyed that. They had the most beautiful fur, and the milk production went up. He later on installed some music for the cows as well and played Mozart, which is already proven that when cows listen to music, the milk production goes up.
Thank you. I knew about the music. I wasn't aware of the car wash. Cow wash, sorry. Listen, before I let you go, from the neurobiological standpoint, you talk about reaching a higher level of thoughtfulness. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yes, I'm not a neurobiologist, but I enjoy listening to some materials and I study some materials that they are presenting in their findings. Thoughtfulness, actually, it is almost controversial again, because when I'm thoughtful, that means I'm full of thoughts, and that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to being kind, because oftentimes when we are unkind due to stress, due to overstimuli, due to some happenings that are out of my control, or maybe me doing something that has consequences I was not expecting or anticipating, or I didn't even think about them, and it happens. So when I am someone who is overreacting at times towards others, oftentimes later on, I may resent that and I may regret what I did. And then I feel bad about myself. Why did I do that? Now, when I nevertheless become more thoughtful towards myself, so I don't even put myself into these situations, or I can condition myself or retrain my brain that I can respond in a different way so that I'm no longer running on autopilot. Oh, I always responded this way. I always react like this. And I can change that and shift that, because who am I? Otherwise, I'm like a puppet on strings and someone pulls and my arm goes up or my head goes this way. So the more kind I become with me, myself, I will carry that as an islander wherever I go into the world and into the activities and interactions I have with other humans. And I may be able to inspire and therefore lead and live by example.
I love that. My staff love the islander concept. Now they're all talking about living in their own islands and trying to communicate and reach to each other and building bridges. I'm going to ask you a very important clarification for a very important point that I think it may sound like the shortest distance between 2 points, but to me, it's really huge. How do we go from conditioning to integrity? It should be interesting.
Well, from conditioning to integrity, I'd start with, first of all, let's admit that we are all conditioned to a degree. And once we become aware of that, then we can practice self-awareness. So, for example, I see an ice cream shop. Oh, I need an ice cream. I had no idea I wanted an ice cream until I saw that ice cream shop. And then I go back to the dog and the bell. So we are conditioned. When I'm aware of that, and then I can make a real decision, judgment, I can evaluate. Do I really want that ice cream, or is it just an old pattern that I like ice cream because I have wonderful memories with grandpa and grandma and my brother, for example. But we want to be aware that we are oftentimes on autopilot, which is very important to live life, because if we would do everything with absolute awareness, then we would be totally overwhelmed, like a computer with 200 tabs open, and then it slows down the system. So we nevertheless want to take an inventory. And then when it comes to integrity, I suggest the 5+2, because integrity has ingredients, and ingredients, most people, they want integrity and they think, yes, this is a man with integrity. Let's dissect what the ingredients are. It's like you go to a restaurant and you have this absolutely fabulously tasteful, flavorful meal. And then, oh, what's in there? Oh, maybe there's a little cinnamon in it. Oh, no, it's maybe cardamom. Oh, maybe it's coconut oil, whatever it is. So we want to know what is integrity, because integrity actually, when we look at the word's meaning, means wholeness. So how can I become the whole human I was born to be and bring that into the world as a gift? When I can bring, and we all have many gifts and talents, no matter how we were taught and told that we don't. That's not true. I have not ever met one human, and I met thousands and thousands of people who did not have a gift or a talent to bring and gift into this world. And when we understand that, okay, integrity, I am whole, that means I'm complete. Now, when I'm complete, then I no longer need to search for someone who completes me. I can then shift in my integrity to find people who complement me. And that's very freeing.
Your book closes with two very important subjects, observation and interpretation. Can you enlighten us a little bit on this one?
I think it is very important that we understand that there's a difference between facts and truth. I understand this is not observation, but what do I base my my truth on? I look at something and I'm observing, 5 senses. It's not only seeing, but yeah, then it goes through the evaluation process, and that does not equal facts. So then therefore, the longer I can remain the observer instead of jumping to conclusion, I allow space and place for things to unfold, and me not jumping to conclusions or me not guessing or projecting, again, is very, very benevolent for everyone's life. Mine first, and then others get the benefit.
Beautiful. In closing, let's touch upon the word remember. You write about this, so tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, I like the play on words, and I think there's much wisdom to be found when we play with words. So many people want to be member of a club, member of this group, member of that social gathering. And I do believe that when we remember, meaning becoming a member again, it's like rethink, think, rethink, think again. So remember, become a member again of that one human family. And I do believe that is very important, especially nowadays where there's much fear-mongering and much war-mongering. And I do believe it is just about time that every single one of us remembers who we really are. And we can choose our behavior once we uncondition ourselves more and more.
Before I let you go, I want to hear more about an adage that you include in your book, and I quote, "To gain access to new shores, you have to leave the old ones first." What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, it's something that my German grandmother said just before she was passing. She couldn't speak anymore, but she could point with her fingers to pictures and sticky notes that were around her. And it is very clear to me, when my hands are full and I carry the groceries, then how can I catch my child that's running towards me, or my grandchild that's So I need to let go first. And the same is when I want to better my life, improve my integrity by remembering, and improve my relationships, and improve with judging less and observing more and longer and asking questions instead of making judgments or making statements and jumping to conclusions. We must let go of the old. It's like when here I live on an island physically, geographically, seriously on an island. And for me to go on another island, I must leave my island. And I think that is a good idea that we remember that as well.
Daisy, I know your time is at a premium, and I want to thank you for this quick interview and tell you that your book is and should be a refreshing reminder that building bridges is not only achievable but necessary, the way we see it. If we've forgotten the principle, well, we can actually refresh our memories with your book and bring us back on track. Thank you, Daisy, and I'm sure we'll speak again when I will ask you to interview for another interview on the 5+2. Enjoy your day, and thanks again for all your time.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.